When Grandma figures out why her granddaughter visits church every single day, she calls the cops. Martha was a faithful woman who cherished her regular visits to the local church. So when she discovered that her eldest granddaughter Lisa had begun attending church every day, she felt an overwhelming sense of pride and happiness. However, as time went on, Martha noticed some strange things in Lisa's life. Although she couldn't pinpoint exactly what was happening, she had an intuition that something wasn't right. Determined to intervene, Martha was shocked beyond belief when she learned Lisa's secret. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, Martha knew that she had to call the police immediately. For years, Martha had made efforts to persuade her children and grandchildren to accompany her to weekly services, but without any luck. However, lately Martha started observing some peculiar behavior from Lisa that made her uneasy. Filled with determination, she decided to investigate further and, after some sleuthing, she eventually discovered the truth about Lisa. The shocking revelation left her in utter disbelief, causing her eyes to widen with astonishment. It became clear to her that Lisa's safety was at serious risk. Lisa had been hiding a terrible secret from her for a long time. With her hands trembling, Martha knew she couldn't handle this on her own and made the difficult decision to reach out to the police. What was happening with Lisa? What could possibly be the secret she had been keeping from her family? And why did Martha feel the need to involve the authorities? Martha, a woman deeply rooted in her faith, was brought up in a religious family where attending church was a weekly routine. Even as the years passed and life progressed, she remained true to the principles instilled in her. Religion held great significance in Martha's life, but she could never have anticipated that it would eventually uncover a devastating truth in her family. Martha had attempted to share her religious devotion with her children and grandchildren, but it turned out to be more challenging than she had anticipated. Her children agreed to accompany her to church every now and then, but her grandchildren showed no interest in joining her at all. Martha successfully convinced them to accompany her to special holiday services, but that was the extent of their involvement. Though a bit disappointed, Martha understood that priorities were shifting and the newer generations did not prioritize religion as much as she did. Martha couldn't contain her happiness when she noticed that her oldest granddaughter, Lisa, was attending church more frequently. Although she would have loved to join her, Martha was cautious not to jump in too soon. She worried that becoming too involved might make Lisa lose interest. Martha embraced this exciting change with joy in her heart, but kept it to herself. She patiently waited for the right moment when she believed Lisa would be ready to accompany her to church every week. Martha couldn't hide her pride as she saw her granddaughter make the choice to put her faith first. A beaming smile seemed permanently etched on her face. But as time went by, she made an unexpected discovery. Lisa began attending church not just once a month or once a week, but every single day. It was an uncommon practice in their community, even for Martha herself. While Martha appreciated her granddaughter's dedication to going to church, she couldn't help but feel that there was something strange about it. She had discussed it with her son and daughter-in-law. Lisa's parents, they all lived in the same house, and they thought it was a bit weird too. At first, she thought that Lisa had just found so much comfort and peace in the services that she wanted to go there every single day. It was obvious to everyone that there was something weird about Lisa. Her visits to the church had started completely out of the blue. Nobody had seen it coming. She had never expressed any interest in any kind of religion at all. If anything, she had made jokes about it or even ridiculed it, much to Grandma Martha's sorrow. And even though she was going to church every single day now, she did not behave like it at all in her daily life. She often fought with her siblings and was rude to her parents. If she went out and anyone asked her where she was going, she would only get mad and slam the door without responding to the question. She was even caught lying several times, and even though they weren't very big lies, this kind of behavior was obviously frowned upon by the church. Grandma Martha's initial excitement and pride were beginning to make room for worry and sadness. What if there was something else going on with her granddaughter? Martha knew that it wasn't necessarily her role to get involved in this, but she decided to speak to her son, Rico, anyway. As soon as she mentioned Lisa, Rico had a worried look on his face. He too was very upset with Lisa's behavior recently. Something was definitely going on with her. Lisa had always been the most rebellious one of the kids, but she was really taking things too far now. She barely even spoke to anyone at home, and she always came home late. Martha and her parents were starting to suspect that she was not really going to church every day, but that she had been lying to them all this time. So they came up with a plan. Rico was going to follow her to see if she was really going to church, as she said. They all expected to find out that she was secretly going somewhere else she didn't want to tell them about, but they did not want to make any assumptions just yet. Rico anxiously waited for his daughter to come home after school, have a quick dinner, and leave the house to go to church, as she usually did. He was nervous, and, frankly, a little scared of what he would find out. Lisa slammed the door as she left the house and Rico watched her through the window. As soon as she had gotten off the driveway, he ran outside, jumped in his car, and followed her. He kept his distance from her, so she would not see him, but he stayed close enough not to lose her from his sight. Rico himself had not been to the church often, but he vaguely knew the route he needed to take to get there. And to his surprise, Lisa was taking that same exact route. Was she really going to church after all? A couple of minutes later, Lisa slowed down, parked her car, and got out. Rico felt horrible. They had arrived at the church, just like he suspected. Lisa had been speaking the truth after all. He watched her as she walked through the church doors, and quickly drove away, and made his way home, filled with shame. The entire ride home, Rico felt extremely guilty. He thought that it would be a good idea to give Lisa some more freedom, but he wanted to talk to his wife about it first. Once he got home, he shared what he saw with Martha and his wife, Lucia. Rico and Lucia both felt very guilty for mistrusting Lisa, but Martha had a hard time just letting go of all the doubts she had been having. She had definitely not imagined Lisa's odd behavior and lies, and she was not willing to just forget all about it, like her parents were. However, she did not want to worry them, so she pretended that she, too, was feeling guilty and that she truly believed that there was nothing weird going on with her granddaughter. But in her head, she was already planning her next steps. She knew that she would need to handle this on her own. Over the next few days, Lisa continued going to church every day. Her parents had completely changed their attitude toward her, and they tried to be a lot more supportive. They also stopped asking her any questions about where she was going, and Lisa didn't seem to mind this at all. But Grandma Martha was still keeping an eye on her. And Martha could not believe it when she discovered something else about Lisa, something that she had been doing behind her parents' back for a while now. All the worries that she had had about her granddaughter only became worse, and she did not even have anyone to talk to about it. She had to keep it all to herself. You see, Martha found out that Lisa had even started skipping school to go to church. Some old friends had asked her about it during service a couple of times. Apparently, they had spotted Lisa there during school hours, talking to the priest. Martha couldn't believe what she was hearing, but she played it cool and acted as if she already knew about all of that. She made up an explanation and told her church friends that Lisa was in her last year of college, and she had plenty of free periods between classes. Everyone was so pleased to see that such a young woman decided to spend her free time in church, and Martha played the part of a proud grandma. But in reality, she was completely shocked. How had it gotten this far? Lisa had never skipped classes before. She knew that she needed to do something about this, and she needed to take a different approach. But she was not going to tell Rico and his wife anything. She did not want to burst their bubble. But Martha also knew that she would never get an honest answer out of Lisa. She had been lying to everybody else, so why would she be honest with her? There was only one person Martha could think to talk to now that could help her: the priest. Martha had known Priest Nicholas for at least 2 decades now. She had gone to this church ever since she moved to this city 20 years ago, and Nicholas had been a faithful servant to the faith long before that. The man was a very respected figure in the community. In a time when people started to drift further and further away from God and religion, Priest Nicholas actually managed to keep his church flourishing. It was not filled to the brim with people every service, but there were always enough churchgoers to make it feel like a serious community. This was probably also one of the aspects that had kept Martha and so many others coming back every Sunday. But with the situation around her granddaughter Lisa, Martha also started to notice something about the kind of crowd that was visiting the church. With so many people losing their religion over the past couple of decades, the decline was always most pronounced with the youth. You would be lucky to have 1 or 2 people under the age of 25 at Sunday services, but Priest Nicholas always seemed to have at least 15 young adults at his talks. It was something that Martha had never really paid attention to before, as she was mostly focused on mingling with people her own age. She could connect with them much better. She started to wonder how he was doing this, and mainly how he had been able to do it to Lisa. So Martha ended up calling the priest and asked him if she could meet up with him to discuss something. Nicholas was a busy man, but he could spare 15 minutes that afternoon. But he did want to know what the meeting was going to be about. So Martha explained the situation to her granddaughter Lisa, and told the priest that she was also just curious in general about how he had been able to attract so many young people. And by the sound of things, Priest Nicholas seemed to have a ready-made answer already prepared. He told Martha that he just really likes to put extra time and effort into getting young people involved with the church. They are the future of religion and need to be invested in. And so he often went to places young adults visited, mostly schools, to have a good and open conversation about religion. He told Martha that he had been laughed out of the building plenty of times, but that he would just always persist, and in the end, there were always a couple of people he managed to convince to keep religion a try, and that made it all worth it for him. Apparently, Lisa had also gotten interested in church when the pastor came to her university. She decided to give it a try and has not looked back since. The priest then told Martha that they did not really need a meeting to discuss this more, as there was no more to tell. But Martha would beg to differ. There was something the priest just said that immediately stood out to her as odd. But she did not want to confront him about it. She wanted to get to the bottom of this first, and so she thanked the priest for his time and hung up the phone. But she was anything but done. The university the priest named. Martha knew that Lisa did not go there and had never gone there. Had the priest just made a mistake? She highly doubted it, as it all happened so recently. And seeing as this was apparently the only university the priest visited, there was not really another school he could confuse it with. He had to have met up with Lisa somewhere else. But where? And why was he not just honest about it? Something was going on, and both the priest and Lisa were clearly hiding something, and Martha was dead set on finding out what that was exactly. But she also realized that there was a good chance that nobody was going to be honest about this with her, and so she had to come up with a plan to find out the truth for herself. And with her very good knowledge of how the church operated, this plan was quickly crafted. For all the things Priest Nicholas was good at, it was widely known that he was not the best at taking confessions. By all accounts, he found it difficult to hear about everybody's indiscretion, mainly because he was very strict on his faith and could simply not forgive certain things. But this also meant that he kept the confession hours to a minimum. He only held them in the morning from 8-9, and then he would walk away from the booth. Martha figured that if she was the last person to give a confession one morning, she could hide in the confession booth for hours on end without anybody coming in to check. This would give her an opportunity to spy on Nicholas and hopefully on her granddaughter Lisa. It seemed like a foolproof plan, and so Martha put it in motion the very next day. She was at the church early but made sure she only got into the confession booth at 8:55, 5 minutes before Nicholas would call it a day. She lied about who she was and had already come up with a ready-made story to confess, completely unrelated to why she was really at church today. It took her nearly exactly 4.5 minutes to tell, which only gave Priest Nicholas enough time to tell her she was forgiven before he quickly left the confession booth himself. Martha was supposed to exit 2 minutes later at most, but of course she refrained from this. She stayed in the confession booth and tried to occasionally peek through the window, and for the first hour it was very quiet in the building. It was almost unnerving, but it made sense as it was just a regular Monday. Everybody had been to church yesterday already, and only some of the most strong believers would show up today, and they often only went to the service at 12 o'clock. But Martha knew from her friends that Lisa had been here last Monday before that time. But to her surprise, it was not Lisa who showed up at the church first. It was another woman, roughly the same age as her granddaughter. Nicholas came out of his office to greet her, and then they went inside. It only took 5 minutes tops, and then the woman left again, thanking the priest. Martha found the whole scene a bit strange, but it was nothing she was really worried about yet. But that feeling quickly changed when more young adults started showing up to the church to have these one-on-one meetings with Priest Nicholas. They were all eerily similar. They were greeted, went into the office for just 5 minutes, and then left again. Every 10 minutes somebody else came through those doors like clockwork. And Martha recognized all of these people from the Sunday services. And then suddenly Lisa showed up, almost out of nowhere. Martha had been so fascinated by what the heck was going on here that she had almost forgotten that she had come here for her granddaughter. And just like the others, Lisa was greeted by Nicholas, and then they went into the office. But then Martha noticed that the door to the office was not fully closed. So she took a deep breath and decided to risk it. She snuck out of the confession booth and snuck into the office to have a peek of what was going on inside. And what she bore witness to nearly broke the poor old woman. She had to contain herself to make sure not to give away the fact that she was there. She knew that most likely nobody was going to believe her, and thus she decided to record a video of it as evidence. Her hands were shaking, but as soon as she had shot the video, Martha quickly made her exit from the church. She had been completely shaken up by her discovery, and did not know what to do with this information. But the more she thought about it, the clearer it became that she just needed to call the police. It broke her heart to have to do this to her own granddaughter, but this ultimate betrayal for the church and of God had to be punished. And if it was up to her, it would have to be punished to the full extent of the law. And the local police could not agree more. They had a hard time believing Martha's story at first, but when she sent the video, the officers knew that there was no way around the truth anymore. There was something going on at that church that they needed to put a stop to right away. This priest belonged behind bars. And so the officer quickly made their way to the church where Martha was still waiting. She had seen Lisa leave just minutes after she herself ran out of the building, and luckily her granddaughter had not spotted her very familiar car. When the police rushed to the office, they managed to catch the priest and the young man in the act and put handcuffs on both of them. They also did a quick search of his office and quickly gathered enough evidence to make a great case against this evil man. You see, this priest did not hold on to this position so strongly because he was a faithful believer in God. Maybe he was at some point, but then he had forsaken him a long time ago. The priest held on to his position because it was a good cover for his true profession. The priest was a dealer, He had been rounding up local youth in the area to sell his wares for him and give them a percentage of the profit. They were all making very good money with this, almost plummeting the city into an epidemic, but the police had not yet put a stop to it. They had been searching for the person who had been overflowing this town with contraband for years now, but had never even thought to look at the local church for answers. But now they finally had their guy, and were even able to identify all the people he was working with over the years. And sadly, among those people was Martha's granddaughter, Lisa. She had gotten into this business to make a few extra bucks when she lost her part-time job. Her parents had also not wanted to help her financially as they were sick of her behavior, and she felt like this was her only option. Luckily, the people who were selling for Priest Nicholas were not given a jail sentence, but only a hefty fine and a lot of hours of community service, and this would end up doing a lot of good for Lisa. It gave her time to reflect on the errors of her ways, and she wanted to make improvements in her life now. She started making a lot of efforts to complete her schoolwork and tried to improve her bond with her family, even with her grandmother Martha, who had exposed her dark secret. With some time having passed, she was even able to thank Martha, as Lisa did not know where she would have ended up if her grandmother had not interfered.